Hey YouTube, how y'all doing? What is up? What is good? I hope y'all had a blessed week. Everybody who's watching this, everyone who's not watching this, I hope y'all had a blessed week. Today we're going to get into interracial relationships. Now I am going to say we are going to be kind of focusing on relationships between black women and white men, but at some point I will do the dichotomies of different relationships within like the black community. So a reason I did want to talk about this was after watching the popular show Love is Blind and seeing how people have been reacting to the show. Love is Blind is a dating show, a reality dating show on Netflix. I don't know if you all have heard of it, but it is very popular on Netflix, like very popular. And one of the... Okay, if you're trying to watch it, then maybe just skip this little part. But if not, it's okay. But one of the main couples that ends up staying together is Lauren and this white man. I'm sorry, I don't always remember white people's names. But I forgot his... Cameron. Okay. Yes, Lauren and Cameron. And her story was very interesting to me. And I feel like a lot of people related to it, which is why I think she just is so popular now. She got like 1 million followers after the show and stuff. And it's because, you know, she talks about how she has had failures when dating black men. Not to say, you know, that all black men are just gonna fail, but like she just has dated black men and never really worked out. And then she's never dated a white man before, but when she does, like, you know, he's this great white man and he like loves her, and like you could just see it on the show. He loves her, he takes care of her, like he just is like obsessed with her, and she's happy. And it just made me really think about, you know, what are the conditions around, you know, what it means to be a black woman dating a white man, what that has looked like in the past, what that looks like today, and what, you know, just the politics around dating are for black women and white men. And so that's the reason I kind of thought about doing this video. Also, just interracial relationships in general. I am from Los Angeles, California, originally from Inglewood, California. Whoop whoop. And I do feel like I notice a lot of interracial relationships here in LA, more so than like some other places. And the girl Lauren is from Atlanta. And she talks about, you know, how the dating scene out there is not great for black women. So it's just been, you know, something interesting I've been seeing and thinking about. So yes, I decided to do a video about it. I'm going to go into the historical context of what that looked like during the times of slavery, and then the landmark case of, it's like the Loving story. I don't know if you all have heard about that. I'm going to talk about that briefly. And then what the research says. A man named Rick Banks is doing a lot of really interesting work and has a lot of really interesting opinions about when black women should do when dating, because of, you know, the phenomenon of where the black men at. So yeah, so stay tuned for that. So when looking at the historical impact of these relationships between black women and white men, a lot of times it was seen as so obviously something very negative, because during the times of slavery, if there were to be a child who was born out of an interracial, I'm not even gonna call it a relationship because it was not mutual, so just like a situation, it was known to be very negative. It was negative both on the side of like the white folks, because, you know, it was like for a white man, it was just like, you know, why would you want to have sex with a slave, everything like that. Obviously we know that with, you know, patriarchy and rape culture, this is definitely happened. But then on the side of the black folks in the field, because everyone knew that if they saw like a little, you know, mixed race kid running around, it was out of a product of rape and colonization and just brutal conditions. So off the bat, you know, these interracial situations never really were seen as something positive. So then fast forward to 1958, we have the Loving story. So after slavery, basically interracial situations and relationships were just cast out, seen as like a no, it was just against the law. And the Loving story is really what changed that. So in 1958, Richard and Mildred Loving are arrested in Virginia, going against Virginia's anti-miscegenation laws. And the court case really was like very popular and went to the Supreme Court, and they essentially ruled that interracial marriages were legal and should be like, it didn't have to have a law against it. And that was in 1958, which, if you really think about it, like, kind of wasn't that long ago. It was kind of, it was definitely a while back, but it's still something. It's funny when people talk about, like, that was in the past, or, and it's like, we really aren't that far from it. A lot of our grandparents around their age were, dealing with these kinds of things, and the world for them was very different, and that's not far removed very much from us. So just also a little piece of information, don't ever let anybody be like, slavery was so long ago, or all these issues were so long ago, because one, they really weren't, and two, we're still being affected by these issues. So the Loving story was in 1958, very important. And then so we fast forward to today. So we see a lot of instances where Black women have like said things like, it's so hard to find a Black man, all the Black men are in jail, X, Y, and Z. And while these are just very facts, these are very true. That doesn't necessarily mean though that it's like impossible for a Black woman to be with a Black man if that is what she wants, But it's definitely something that, is very accurate. And a researcher by the name of Rick Banks, his name is Rick Banks, he does a lot of research about interracial relationships and Black women, and he feels that because of these statistics, because of Black men being in jail and things like that, Black women should date outside of their race. So he's done like extensive research. There's a lot of videos on YouTube where he's talked about like, is marriage just for white people? And I brought him up just because, like I said, he kind of deals with specifically Black women and what like we should do in terms of dating. And not to say that, it's impossible to find a Black man, but he's also done research where he's like talked to Black women, and a lot of them have felt like they may have to like lower their standards a little bit to date a Black man, which I don't know, it's definitely something, and, it's obviously because of, society and things like that, and, things that go against Black men and Black women, but it's just finding Black men apparently that are like at the level was like a big thing during the research. So yeah, that would be his tips for y'all Black women who are just interested in dating or just things like that. Now, while I feel like his research is sound, I just say like my tips would be don't put yourself in a comfortable position. Don't go on a date with some white man and he, keeps using the N-word and he's fetishizing you, and, just in the name of, I need to try to get out there because I need somebody. First off, Black women, we do not need anybody. That's the golden rule. But it is nice to have somebody 100%. Like, who doesn't? So now you may be wondering, like, what does this history have to do with, like, today, and why am I listening to it? One is because, this is a channel where I will be talking about Black knowledge, Black history, things like that. But also it does inform a lot of opinions and feelings today. So, for example, I feel like, a lot of the reasons why, interracial relationships, especially when looking at Black women dating outside of our race, have some points of contention within the Black community is because of these, historical facts back in the day. So the fact that a lot of Black men were demasculinized by white men, and just the relationships within the family unit and things like that do hinder, if a Black person, it doesn't even have to be a Black man or whatever, but just a Black person sees, an interracial couple and feels like but just like, oh, like, they're not holding it down for the community as much, which is a lie, because I do genuinely believe that you can be pro-Black and be in an interracial relationship. My girl Aisha Conde does a video about that. I'll put the link in the description. I do genuinely agree with a lot of what she says. It's genuinely just about what you're doing, because you can be in a relationship with another Black person. You can be two Black people in a relationship and none of y'all are pro-Black. So like, I think that's real too. So I definitely think like that is a myth. But I bring up the historical context just because, a lot of times history does inform the present, does inform a lot of people's beliefs. Maybe it shouldn't, but it does. So that is something I wanted to mention as well. Okay. So now that we have all these historical information, we have all these, research. What is the research saying? What does this mean for you? Well, the first tip I would give in terms of really thinking about this and, seeing how it applies to your life would first at the door automatically, this is something I just genuinely believe in, always check your prejudices. Do you have any ill will towards black men as a black woman or vice versa? I have heard some black women have these feelings for black men, and I do think that's something to check just out of, it's never good to be negative. And also, you never want to carry that into a relationship with whomever you'd want to be with. And also, which is like the biggest thing, being trash is not just restricted to one race. Any dude can be trash, like any race of man, and they can be trash. So it's not, safe or positive at all to assume, black men, they're, this. That's never good for the community at large. Also, this is a time when you can be, hashtag activist. Well, not activist, but and if you have noticed any of your friends kind of having those ideas or thoughts or feelings, saying something to them, like, why do you feel this way? Or do you recognize that maybe you feel this way out of like an unearthed trauma that, you may experience, and how can we, push to not at least, spread that and push that and speak on that. Speak on the ill will, speak on the stereotypes, speak on feeding into that, because that's just never, good, even for black women's mental health. There are rates that black women are like the most susceptible to like heart disease and hypertension. There's a lot of reasons why that is the case, and a lot of times it's related to stress and just unwanted, baggage. So just in general, for all of our mental, fortitude and health, it is good to let those things go. And then another tip, so if you are a black woman or know black women who are interested in dating black men, but, for some reason feel like they can't, maybe it's the area they live in, maybe it's proximity, encourage them to travel. That is really big. Like, I know for me, for someone in LA, like whenever I go to the East Coast, I just feel like I just see so many black relationships, black people together. And then I have friends who are from California, went to either the East Coast or like the South for school, and just talk about how, my specific city, Los Angeles, is just very just not good for, not good, but it's harder, I'll say. That's what they say. Their words, not mine. But I do see what they're saying. So in general, I feel like, if you ever feel like, where are they at? And, where do I go? You never know who you might find. And they might not be in the same city. I saw a tweet or like a meme. It was so funny. It was just like, 9 billion people in this world, and you think your soulmate is from high school. And I'm like, that's low-key true. So either way, like, it's important to just get out of, your area, your comfort zone sometimes, and see what else is out there. Because just because there might not be as many, black men in your specific area, there might be more other places. So for all of you also, there's a tip. So yes, that is some of my information and tips and tricks about interracial dating, specifically for black women and white men. It was inspired by the show Love is Blind. I have like some experiences of seeing it in Los Angeles. Then there's of course historical context going back to slavery, and then fast forwarding to the loving story. Richard Banks is really interesting information. I will put a link down in the description box for videos and stuff about some of his TED Talks, because they are very interesting, and yeah. And then yes, but essentially just, do you, be good for you, but if need be, travel to the places, that are fulfilling what you think it could be fulfilling. So yes, that is all for this week. Tune in next week for another informational video about a topic that I have not posted yet. It will be a surprise. But yes, live black and prosper. Black knowledge is black power. See y'all next week.
Put your bad self. Say it loud.